Welcome back to Survivor Girl Podcast, everybody. Happy Survivor Girl Sunday. I'm so thankful to be back here in the studio. Have a special guest today, but before we get into that, I'm going to go ahead and do the disclaimer like I always do. I cannot treat or prescribe or do any kind of thing like that. I am not a doctor or a therapist. I'm just here to help hopefully uplift and inspire along with my guest. So today is kind of cool. Finally got somebody in the studio. I'm excited about that. But I do want to do one other update really quick. Since my surgery, I'm doing awesome. Everything is healing and I'm able to do so much more, feeling better. Anxiety levels and everything have actually cut down completely. So I have like maybe this much, which is incredible because before surgery it was pretty rough. So doing really well, healing very well. Got the okay to continue to keep on training for the upcoming kayak fishing event that I've got coming up in May. I will probably be pre-recording some episodes before then instead of trying to do them while I'm down there. I will do some updates and post some videos while I'm out on the water. I do have cameras to be able to do that, so hopefully I'll have signal to be able to put those out so you guys kind of know where I'm at and how the tournament is going. So I thank you guys for joining in on Twitch and on YouTube, and those that listen on solidstateradio.net. We appreciate that as well. So without further ado, I have Mark, the barber, joining me tonight on the show, and we talk about thriving survivors. And you were on the Don't Make This Weird podcast with Tony and I, and you had such an incredible story that I wanted you to come on to Survivor Girl. We had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Totally different podcast from this one.
So I had to calm way down because the other one I hurt going home yet from laughing. I got to tell you, it was the most fun I've had, in a long time. So, and thank you for having me here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun to have that show. I felt the same way. I kept telling Tony after that. I was like, that was such a fun show. It was so fun. But yeah, it's a lot different on this show because we bring a lot of more real and raw kind of stuff. But I'm happy to have both platforms to be able to do so. But you were talking about your story and a lot of different stuff that you have faced and overcoming so many things, So I wanted you to come on and share your story.
Well, thank you. So, and it's funny because I've noticed as you go through life, you constantly, you see things and you see things differently. As we discussed before, I'm no longer 34 or even 35. So I'll be 58 in about a month. And so you see things differently now. Mm-hmm. And I run across something the other day, social media, not the world I live in all the time, but the one I like to pretend in once in a while. And you survive your circumstances depending upon your attitude. Do you choose to be a victim or do you choose to be a survivor? And it was kind of cool that they word it that way. Yeah. And so, I look at it this way. What I've been through, I could have very easily went totally opposite direction what I have. And I will tell you that alcoholism, unfortunately, is alive and well in my family. I am not that. And I'm very grateful for that. And I don't condemn those that are, but I wish you well that someday you'll pick up and be a survivor. I don't know where you'd like me to start.
We talked about all kinds of different things. I mean, I guess.
Go back?
Yeah, go back. Let's go back.
Okay. So we'll go back to, in fact, we'll go back as far as high school.
All right.
It's going to go way back. 40-year class reunion coming up in July.
Right, there you go.
And most of the rest of my class still has hair. Anyhow, they're gaining on me. They're gaining on me. I cut 3 of the guys' hair. Let me tell you, they're gaining fast. And I might take a little off just before the reunion.
Yes.
But anyhow, so, it was one of those things. I was not the popular guy. I was never homecoming king. I ran for two different offices in FFA. Did not get elected to either one of those. People that were very well qualified did. I thought I was qualified, and I was. It didn't destroy me. It's one of those things. So you're thinking, golly, I wonder what I did wrong. And there again, as you go through life, it's nothing you do wrong. It's that moment in life as other people see it. And of course, at that point in life in high school, it's all about the party and and I wasn't into the big party crowd. I wouldn't say I wasn't into the in crowd. I hung out with a lot of the so-called jocks. I played sports. So, but I'm more of a plain person. Raised in a family that went to church every Sunday. So there was no going out Saturday night till whenever.
Right.
Because before church on Sunday morning come 50 milk cows and about 60 head of young cattle. And the cows had to be milked and everything had to be fed and the barn had to be cleaned. And so, part of that kind of kept me based low growing up. I will tell you, though, I was the student council president
All right.
in 7th grade of the entire middle school. And 2 weeks into school, I ended up in the superintendent's or in the principal's office. And he said that he was very disappointed that the student council president had been kicked out of class. And I said, well, we have a little difference of moral opinion between me and the teacher. I was never into the Big Bang Theory. And so I stood my ground. And that's one thing I will say. My personality, sometimes I probably should have ducked. Sometimes I probably should have run. But I have stood my ground. And sometimes that causes you problems in life. But anyhow, but moving back. So moved on through life, went to college, got a degree in barbering, moved back to my hometown, which may or may not have been a wise decision for those of us that live in small towns.
Yes.
Because I had a choice to work at the Renaissance Center, where nobody would have known a thing about me,
Right.
which probably would have been a better move to get started. In fact, I laugh about it now. I'm in my 36th year. I can't believe that anybody that knew me come in and got their hair cut. I mean, these people, after watching me grow up, and then they still come in and sat in a barber chair. Now, some of the neighbors, it took them a couple of years because they were like way used to me. So they were a little nervous. We weren't the smash them up, bang them up kids, but we did have our fun. And so, I built that business and it took a while. I was the number 4 barber in town. 2 of the guys had literally 40 and 45 years experience on me when I opened. The other gentleman had about 25 years on me. So it kind of helped, though I came in, it caught on to the younger crowd. But so going back, the reason I went to barber college, and this is part of the
I was
surviving,
just going to ask
this
that.
is part of the surviving in life. At 22 years of age, my mom and dad had divorced about 3 years before that. The family farm was still in a legal battle in court, and it caused more tension than it should have between my father and I. And my older brother was there. My younger brother, he had moved uptown with my mom, but then was moving back. And by the way, he ended up being the one that stayed on the home farm. He's operating that now. But my dad and I got in an argument one day, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, it'd be a cold day in Hawaii before I ever get up before 5 o'clock to look at a cow's back end. So being my father, which is part of where I got my personality from,
Right.
he awoke me the next morning at 4:30 just to see how far it would push. And I got to tell you, it was kind of it was a lose-lose, but in the end, a win-win. That night at 5:30, I was sitting in Mount Clemens at my sister's house. I had made the decision that I was done farming. I was done. So I went down and I stayed there for a couple of days and signed up for barber college. And I got to tell you, as your show, is about surviving. A lot of times it seemed like every decision I made at the early point was a great decision. And then a couple weeks in, it was like, well, that wasn't too bright. But I got to tell you, I waited about 3-4 months, went back down. I'd signed up to start in September. This incident with my dad happened about in June. So I went down in September. In fact, it would have been my mother and father's anniversary had they still been married. By the way, they were married to each other 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they kept, people go through
Didn't
3
learn the
marriages.
first, yeah.
So they kept marrying each other. And I'm thinking, one of you just need to end this and walk away.
Just stop.
Yeah, stop. This is not good for your children. Especially not this child. 4th of 5 children. I was not the favorite son, nor not the favorite daughter either. There was only one of them. But anyhow, so I started barber college, and actually, very much to my surprise, it went really good. And then came trouble with one of the instructors. And this goes down to that. Sometimes it looks like a good idea, sometimes it doesn't. A man actually probably a little bit older than I am now, and I was 22 years old, fresh off the farm, and I never had the Arnold Schwarzenegger body, okay? I'm not even gonna lie to you, but I was pretty impressive, in my younger days. And so him and I got in a pushing match, and natural instinct growing up in a house, 3 brothers, I just reached out, grabbed him by the throat, picked him up off the floor. In this day and age, I'd probably still be headed to prison. I mean, it was lucky that was close to 40 years ago. And so I ended up dropping out of barber school momentarily. And this is the amazing part of survival, is learning not only the art of being forgiven, but to forgive. It is. And so the following week, he called me up and asked me to forgive him, that he was out of line. And I had to admit that I was out of line. And so therefore, it's that give and take of forgive and forgiveness. It's a 2-way street. And that is part of my life of surviving. You have to, and even those that you ask to survive, to forgive, if they choose not to forgive you, that's not your problem. That then becomes their problem. But anyhow, so Phil, God rest his soul, has now passed on, and went down. Old Italian fella, so we had to have a hug. I was a little afraid, that I was going to get the kiss of death on the cheek and it would be all over.
Right.
But, we had to have the hug, and actually it turned out, as much as I really loved and respected my other instructor, Phil became more of a mentor to me at that point. There was a great deal of respect earned there. And so, finished up the barber college, come back to Sandusky, was in business a little over a month, and met my first and only ex-wife. And I'm good with that, let me tell you. We seemed to hit it off really, really well right out of the gate, and met her in January of '85. And we started dating immediately. And my older brother and his wife now were getting married the end of March. And I don't know, we just seemed to be on this speed dating thing. It was like, there again, stop, go on vacation for a week and let everything just kind of calm down. We didn't do that. So we were engaged by the end of March. Yeah. And then married October 4th of that same year. So from there, business started to pick up. And I mean, I'd been in business for a whole year, at $4.50, by the way, for a haircut at that point. Little tough to make a living on that nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think that government assistance that even helped. But anyhow, married, things went well. We lived in an apartment for the first year. And I was not going to survive that. Speaking of things you're not going to survive, you can't take, pardon the pun, but you can't take a wild dog and put it in a kennel in the backyard in town. It don't survive very well. So I said, listen, either divorce me or let's move out of town. And really hoping now, looking back, she should have went option one. But anyhow, so we found a little house in the country, and we worked on it. And I'm going to take side steps here every once in a while. As our former pastor used to say, I'm gonna take off in a rabbit track. We worked in that house for like 3 months, every night, every Sunday afternoon. I mean, we scrubbed, we put down new carpet, she repainted all the kitchen cupboards after we got the mice and rats out of the house. Yeah, that's a survival trip there too. Yeah, you hear them running up and down the walls. It's like, you got to go. And so we moved in, and there again, we were happy. So we thought, we got along. And a couple years later, along come my eldest son, who will be 31 years old. And this is all leading up to, I'll get to this as we go along. And I said, this house isn't working for me. It was small. This house was 24 foot square. You literally wanted to go outside to change your mind.
Yeah.
Our bedroom was 10 and a half foot by 10 and a half foot. And to get out, you had to crawl over the bed, which is against the wall on one side and almost touch the wall on the other end.
And that's like what everybody wants these days now, like the living, the minimalist, and the tiny house. So like,
yeah, no thanks.
not for you.
No, my bedroom's 16 foot square. Thank you. But I bought a piece of property, which is now where I live. And it's kind of weird because it's exactly a half a mile north of where we were living at that time. We moved up there. And a couple years later, we'd bought a mobile home. We moved in the mobile home. A couple years later, along come the second son, who's about to be 28. And speaking of surviving, he still lives at home. Yeah, and he needs to find a girlfriend. And one of us
fast track that.
Yeah, one of us need to move out, and I'm voting for me.
Yeah.
The threat is that I'm going to take my bed, my dresser, my gun cabinet, and my clothes, and everything else stays, because I moved myself 3 times, my brother 3 times, my mother 4 times, and by the way, she had an upright piano. We moved that puppy 4 times in 12 years, and the last time we moved it, we said, ain't happening again.
You give it away for free when you leave.
Yeah. No, push it in the yard, set it on fire.
Yeah.
They're heavy. But anyhow, so mobile home. A few years later, we decided to build a home. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. Instead of being the point where things were going to blast off. So in 1999, we'd already put an addition on the back of the mobile home. And 24 by 24, which was our living room, I want to let you know. Actually, my ex-wife ran a daycare, and it was a daycare room. And so we sold our 14 by 80 mobile home in August. And the kind of disaster guy that I am, that I survive, it's because I just keep moving. So 2 days after we pulled the trailer house out of the lot, the builder showed up to start digging the hole, and that was the first day of the Sanilac County Fair, of which I was on the fair board. So I was kind of like the absentee homeowner there for about a week. Get up at 4, go do chores at my brother's place, come home, and then go to work, go to the fair, come home at midnight, repeat. By the way, I want to let you know, at that point, I was a Mountain Dew holic.
Oh boy, that's surviving on its own.
It is.
That stuff is crazy.
Yeah, 32 ounces a day. So anyhow, so then we started to build a house, and ex-wife was a dental hygienist, very good at what she did. But a couple of years after we built the house, the wheels just seemed to come off. I guess in all honesty, she wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. She was more unhappy than I was. A lot of fighting, a lot of stress. I'm debating how deep I want to go here. I kept 2 jobs, the barbershop and farming. We built a house in 99. We built a barn in 2001 and started the children raising cattle, kind of as 4-H projects and as money makers for the kids. We had chickens. We had, my son decided to raise wild mallard ducks. That's kind of fun until 40 of them buzz your head while you're out in your own yard. And so, I mean, in all of us, there's always good in the bad. But then along come, she started hopping jobs. Accusations of infidelity towards me. And these bothered me because I was not raised that way. And then everything went good, kind of got along, and everybody said, oh, you're normal, So we'd go to the marriage counselor for 6 months. We'd get everything figured out, and we'd go for a month and a half, for a year and a half, and everything was fine. And then off would come the wheels again, up, down, up, down. There was some depression in there. A lot of medication, not on my side. And this all brought more stress on me. 2 small children, a marriage that I could see was not going well at all. And to back up a little bit, in 94, my lifelong hero and mentor, my father died from mixed tissue disease. That threw a little stress on me because then I'd lost the guy that I always talked to. Right. And that's huge. Yeah. That is huge. And it's unfortunate. A lot of children in this day and age don't have that even from the beginning. My father, even though we bumped heads, he was there so we could bump heads. Right. And, I always get a kick out of people who say, oh, I feel so bad for that guy. He lost his kid when he was 5 or lost his dad when he was 5. Yes, that's not good. But I got to tell you, when you've got teenage boys of your own, that is when you need your father because he survived me.
Right.
He
right.
survived me. He survived my 3 brothers. In fact, the running joke is that I want to get a headstone, replace the one he has, and put on there, here lies a man that was a complete and total idiot 5 times, died a genius. There's knowledge comes with time. So anyhow, so moving forward, 2009, the wheels just finally come off. Later found out on the 10th of January, she said, well, I was going to serve you for Christmas, but I thought I'd wait until after. And I thought, well, that's nice because I just spent like $1,000 on you for Christmas and you got me a bottle of Crazy Glue. And I still don't understand I've never got it. I mean, some of the gifts over the years were kind of weird, but Crazy Glue, she got me a tube of Crazy Glue for Christmas that year. And I thought, I don't get it. And maybe that's part of it. That's the mystery. Yeah. But now this is where you and I come in on this and where you survived. Suddenly my whole world was flipped upside down. Not only was somebody that I thought was going to be my spouse for life suddenly gone. My eldest son had since graduated and he kind of moved out. He did move back in for a while. Him and I, that was rocky at times. A lot like Rocky, not the squirrel either. And so you got to go soul searching. You got to dig. And gratefully, although my mom and dad were not, we were not the Cleavers. We were not. We weren't the Munsters either. Let's get that straight. Went back to a foundation. And there again, my father. You know, a lot of what my father brought me through, because my mom and dad divorced 3 times between 1976 and 1990.
That's the back and forth.
It is. You know, mom would be gone, mom would be back. Mom would be gone, mom would be back. And finally I said to him, I said, you know, let's leave her gone. It's okay. It's okay.
It's all right.
It's okay. I know you love her, Dad. Sometimes for you, that's where the forgiveness comes in. You can forgive a person. If they don't want to forgive you, if they don't want to accept you for who you are, then it's time to move on. And so, you know, here we are, stressed right to the max. Divorce lasted 34 months. During this, we were in court 20 times. And of course, each time I got to shut my barbershop down.
So you're losing money there.
Yeah, well, it was kind of funny though.
Everything.
I had a really good friend, and most of the court appointments were like an hour. So I got to leave, guys, at 10 o'clock. I'll be back at 11. Sit, read, entertain yourselves. I'll buy coffee down the street. And it was funny because I remember the one day I come back, and there was 9 guys sitting in my barbershop. They were just sitting there. And I said, "You're kidding, right?" "No, what the heck? We knew you're coming back sooner or later." I said, "Okay, well, here I am." And so, no, you know, and that's where it come into being in my hometown, the people that really knew me. And that helped, though. That helped part of the healing process, part of the forgiveness process. And I got to tell you, this is weird. You know, we live in a world where you're not supposed to, and I don't get this, okay? I have trouble with this, I really do. You're not supposed to hug people, especially if they're the same sex. You're not supposed to hug them. Sorry, I'm a hugger.
Me too.
You know, if you're good with a handshake, though, I mean, that's okay.
Right.
But I hug. And I was at a funeral one night, and a very good friend of mine's father had passed away. And I walked in. She said, "Don't say a word. Just hug me like you hug me." She said, "Because when you hug me, everything goes away." And so I had a customer that was standing there, and you don't know me
Small
well,
town.
Heather. You don't know me well, Heather. But yeah, I get emotional. I can go from like 0 to 240 in like 3 seconds. And not your typical hard rock guy here. I do cry. When things hurt, you cry. And you have to cry to survive. Now, you can't cry every day. That's called depression. So, and so one of my customers, man, same age, a very good friend of mine, I just literally broke. Absolutely broke. And him and another man, he got up from the chair. The other guy come across the room, and they both just grabbed me, and they hugged me. And at that moment, I wouldn't have cared who walked through the door. And I got a big window too, by the way, baby, 10 foot long, 5 foot high. And the strange part was, 3 years later, I gave him a hug while he cried because he was going through the exact same thing. And that's part of the don't judge the nut on the tree next to you, because he just fell, because eventually you're going to fall off your tree too. And you're going to end up in the same place. And so through my community, through the people in my church, my family, they're a little weird, but it's okay. In fact, it was unfortunate. My younger brother, a year later, a year to the day, his wife filed for divorce. And that's okay. He survived. He's married. He's went on. He's married a wonderful lady. I think the world and all of. But anyhow, so back to mine. So this is just to give you a time frame. It's 2010. She filed. Finally, on October 31st, Halloween, 2012. It's finally over. It's finally over. And you know, I joked through the whole thing. You know, I'm going to throw a party. No, there just comes a. We're done. In the process, I had to stand on the courthouse steps. I had to buy my own house and my own farm back at a public auction. And within that, there's a story. All my financings lined up. We're ready to go. An hour and a half before, I walk into the bank, hand them the check, and the lady at the bank, and I don't mean a teller, I mean like a vice president, looks at me and said, "Oh, we can't take that check. That guy doesn't have an account here." I said, "That guy owns 4,000 acres of land. You're telling me you're not going to take his check for $40,000? Nope." So weird as it would be, 3 weeks prior to this, I had cut a man's hair, never been in my shop. In the 25 years I'd been there at that point. He said, "If you ever need anything," and I mean anything, "you call me." I called him. He goes, "I got cash." Went and got it, took it to the bank. Everything was good. So it all worked out. Because another friend of mine stood there and said, "Mark's going to buy his house back. Mark's going to buy his farm back." And so I did. And so then we moved forward. Well, then over the course of the next 4 years, I end up having 4 throat surgeries. We all thought these were because of stress. No, well, the stress didn't help. That's where the Empazola comes in. That eats up that acid, you know, your body produces 14 gallons of. I was taking 4 of them a day, and I'm thinking, you know, at this rate, I'm going to deplete my body and be dead before I'm 60. We got to figure this out. So my son in 2016, at 5 o'clock in the morning, loaded me in the truck, and we drove somewhere around 100 miles an hour from our place to Sandusky. By the time I got there, about the last half mile, I was starting to get a different shade other than what you are, you know. Yeah. So they got me in there. Doctor came in very quickly. They pretty well knew what was going on. But I was to the point where I was beyond having trouble breathing. I was not breathing hardly at all. And so, you know, he said, "Okay, you got to do something different here." And that's when we went for allergy testing and found out this whole thing was food allergies.
Yeah, scary.
Very scary. Found out most of the things I enjoyed in life, like peanut butter.
I feel for you on this.
Yeah, eggs, you know.
Being a farmer.
Yeah, you know. Yeah. Thank God I'm not allergic to pork, beef, or chicken. I can eat a lot of that. And, but no soy, no wheat, no eggs, no dairy. That's a big dinger. When you've been a dairy farmer for like 50 years of your life, that's a dinger. No shellfish, and no tree nuts. So yeah, it was a different life. And through this all of this, friends. And I'm the type of person that I've got friends. I've got lots of friends. I've probably got 10 friends that I could tell anything to, and it's not going to go any farther than their ears. And so, you know, part of surviving in my world has been the fact that you pick quality people. You know, I think back at 18, you pick people that you want to hang around because they're fun.
Right.
As you get older, you find out you want to pick people that help you survive because they give good advice. They have good standards.
Yeah.
They're not going to sell you out to the next person in line. And normally they have good morals. They're not going to blab everything about you to everybody. It's kind of funny because people think, you know, being a barber, they go, I shouldn't tell you this, but they tell you anyhow. And then you go someplace, you go, oh yeah, you know, if I was, now listen, you know, if I told 2% of what I really know, there'd be a contract in my head someplace in this world. I know stuff about people that sometimes it's kind of hard. You walk through a store and you run into somebody and go,
I don't know about you.
ooh, dude, yeah, I can't. Yeah, we probably should just not say hi.
Right.
And you keep walking. But a lot of my survivability, and I promised myself I would share this, so I'm going to do this. I have a very strong belief in God. That has always been there. That was instilled in me as a child. Those are the people that I go back to. You know, a lot of people, you go to church, you're not perfect. No, I'm not. No, if I was perfect, I wouldn't be here. We're not perfect on this earth. We're not going to get up and win every day. Dawn, I'm sorry, I'm going to tell your story. She's a recovering alcoholic. It's my sister. Love her to death. You have fall down days. They are fall down days. The difference is that you fall down, you get back up. The mark of a champion is not how many times you get knocked down. It's that you get back up every time to answer that next bell. And her and I, we joked about it, you know. She said, well, you know, she said, sometimes it doesn't hurt to get a drink. And I said, no, but you can't do it every day. You can't do drugs every day. And this one's very close to me because I have a very dear, dear friend that I love her to death. She needs to move on. Her marriage is a train wreck. It has been. She suffers from depression because of verbal abuse. It just leads to fall down days, way more than she needs to have. And when I say, you know, a lot of people, oh, it's verbal. Nah, you know, so if somebody looks at me and goes, are you stupid? That's a judgment call. You know, that's a judgment. And I believe me, there's a world full of people out there that they go, what's this dude doing on this podcast? Because he's not that sharp. You don't have to, you can fool a lot of people. No, seriously. Being verbally abused every day is not a good thing. And I don't care how much you love that person that's doing the abusing, you need to walk away. Not forever. But people, it's like a tornado, okay? There's swirling. There's a vacuum. And that vacuum is sucking you in. And the problem is, you can't run hard enough to get out of that vacuum. What you have to do is seek safety. You got to get down. You got to get below where the storm is. And for people to try and, well, you know, that's fine. And I really don't. It absolutely crushes me to watch, especially young couples. And actually, it don't matter. Had a couple that was married for 45 years, and she walked out on him. And it was like, what was that? That's a life, to me, that's a lifelong, and that's where I'm at. It was a lifelong commitment. But back to this, you can't stay in that storm. You've got to back off. You've got to find a safe place. I don't care if it's, I don't care if it's a shelter. I don't care if it's your best friend's place. I don't care if it's the pastor down the street that you've never set foot in his church. But you survive by learning, I can't weather this storm. I can't stand and battle it head on. And so you back off. You find your shelter. You seek counsel of people that are wiser than you. And I know it sounds like I'm picking on this category, but I got to tell you, grandfather, big drinker, all his life. And he told me, he said, I never found any wisdom on the bar stool next to me. I just found the other drunk sitting next to me. And whether it's drinking, no matter what it is, drowning or medicating is not going to fix.
Just pushes things down.
It pushes it back. It prolongs it. Yes, it hides it. It masks the problem. And so, you need to find those. And I'll tell you, I lost some friends going through life, and I have. Metaphorically and physically, I just lost a very dear friend. OD'd on heroin, 55 years old. Lost touch with him. Smart man, but never could really come to grips with who he was. And that's the other thing. You have to come to understand who you are. And we laugh about, and I joke about it because I just had a lady today walk up to me, start talking to me. I got to tell you, I had to look like that mule on Bugs Bunny, the one that gets shot in the face with a cannon. I didn't have a clue who she was. She knew who I was.
Right.
She said, you cut my dad's hair. You cut my husband's hair. And I'm thinking, that's great. I have no idea who you are. There's a true identity. And as you and I talked last time, you found that identity. Or finding it, I guess I should say. Is that the correct word?
Yeah, the authentic, yeah.
I am not a Rhodes Scholar. I will never, ever be the world's best barber. Although people will tell you, I'd love to go to Marky's best barber I've ever been to. That's fine. I love that short little ego trip. That's always good for the ego. Inside, that's the person you have to find. And to find that person, you have to find truth. And no, but you have to give yourself over to the fact that you're going to find the truth. And that's when you start to find out, gosh, maybe I do have problems. Maybe I'm not the world's best husband. Maybe I'm not the world's best dad or mom or whatever. But you're not going to survive in a sinking boat. So you got to figure out, this is how we're going to move back up. And maybe you're going to fix the problem. Maybe you're going to fix all the problems. And I've met people who have done that. And I got to tell you, good for you. Those of the rest of us that make up the other 75% of the population, we're not going to do so well. You're going to lose money in life and investments. You're going to wreck cars. I remember my kid called me, goes, Dad, I said, doesn't matter. I said, you're okay? Yeah. I said, it's sheet metal. It's made to replace. I had a young guy told me one day, he said, if God makes it, it dies. If man makes it, it breaks. And I've done a lot of welding on both, on life and on machinery. I've done a lot of welding. You're not going to survive giving up. You've got to, the old joke, if you're not going to move forward, at least move over.
That is a good one.
Keep moving. Keep your head up. In today's battle, it's not tomorrow's battle. And you've got to live each day. And I tell people, the difference between a survivor and an exister is a survivor looks forward and says, next week, next month, next year, this is what set goals. Set goals to strive to, realistic goals. Right. I am never going to run the Boston Marathon, okay? This fat old man gets out once a year and does a 1 mile walk for Right to Life. And that's okay. I can jog it. But I'm never going to run a 6-minute mile. And hard to believe. I know it is hard to believe. I did runs once. There we go. This will all come out. I have trouble with the English language, by the way.
I do too.
Yeah.
You're good. Don't worry about it. Constantly.
I once run an under 5-minute mile. And I thought that was pretty amazing, Now, the truth is that was 40 years ago. 2 years ago, I ran a 9-minute mile. But I've got a friend of mine, and speaking of goals and surviving, she has survived many things. She's been through a divorce. She's, health issues. That woman gets up every day and runs and runs. And she's in her 70s. And I got to tell you, that's the biggest reason I won't run, because every year we have a run, she runs right by me. And I just, thanks again. And I know it sounds like I'm going back to kick the dead horse one more time, but a very dear friend of mine called me last week. And we'll get to that in a second, because I'm going to bring this up. Men and women can be friends. I have people all the time, you can't have somebody for the opposite sex. You can.
Yes, you can.
Number one, you've got to set down your moral barriers. You got to understand that is a friend, period. I can hug you, but that is it. I can go to dinner with you, but that is it. It's not advisable if you can't hold your moral ground. I got a very good friend of mine. Her husband calls me Mark the Baptist, which, by the way, I was for about 12 years of my life. I was Baptist. I will not go to their house unless I call and make sure that he is home. I know me. I know her. I know him. We're all very good friends. But out of respect, and that's the big one right here, to survive, you have to respect yourself. When no one else will give you respect for what you've survived or what you've done, you have got to be able to say to yourself, now it has to be respect worthy. You can't say, hey, I got drunk for 3 weeks in a row. That's nothing to be respectful about.
No, or brag about.
Or brag about. Yeah. But you have to respect yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, to get respect, you must give respect. And so I will not go to these people's house out of respect, because I wouldn't want somebody seeing me pulling the yard, her husband not being home, and going, hey, what was he doing over to your house when you were gone? Because that disrespects him. Oh, lots of troubles. But anyhow, her son last week, great kid. I love my children, but I could have taken one like this. This kid put himself through trade school, super, super smart, Very, very sweet young man. He loves to live just on the edge once in a while, and that comes with a motorcycle. And we almost lost him a week ago Saturday. He went motorcycle riding, brand new bike, of which, motorcycle riding's been his thing. But he took this bike out. It's a something 450. Huge, huge dirt bike. Took a jump, over jumped by 30, 40 foot, come down, crushed his L1. To the point where the doctor said, 2 more millimeters, you'd have never walked again. He now has 1 through 5 all fused together. So he's she stopped in yesterday. It was funny because she come to the door. She said, "I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not." I gave her a hug. We both cried. It's okay. Right, whole room full of men. We both cried. It's okay. But we're friends enough, and we've battled together. And she's been with me through this whole last 20 years of my life. And when she had to head out of state last week to drive, her and her husband to drive with their son, and it was a long drive, she called me, said, "Please pray. This is what happened. We need prayer. But most of all, I need to know you're there." And that's my trick to survival. I have surrounded myself with absolutely awesome people. Not my doing, part of their doing, part of God's doing. At the end of the surgeries, or in the middle of all those surgeries, I lost a barn full of all of my feed, half of our equipment. And I can remember the fire chief standing there with his arm around me. And he said, "You've got to pick one or the other." And I said, "What?" He said, "Your barn is 75 foot away. Your house is 75 foot away." He said, "If the wind shifts at all, you got to pick one." And at 14 below zero in February, the night my son was on the sweetheart court, I'm standing in my yard at 6:30 at night thinking, house, barn. It was so cold the fire trucks were freezing up as they were trying to pump water. The amazing part was the building imploded on itself. There was actually 2 firemen inside that survived. One on the outside that he looked like a turtle. That guy had like an inch of ice on him. But I remember the fire chief standing there, and he's got his arm around me, and he said, "You got to pick one or the other." What do you do? There's 500 people. As soon as the fire whistles, everything started going off. My phone, that night when it was over, I had over 150 messages. What can we do? What can we do? Sheriff deputy walked up to me 2 hours into this fire, and he said, "Mark, there's a man sitting at the corner in a truck with a trailer." He said, "In fact, there's 2 of them there." I said, "I don't know who they are." He said, "I don't know either." He said, "But they're sitting there." And he said, "If you want your cattle moved to another farm, they'll take them right now." By the time it was over, there was 3 trucks and trailers there. Okay, now I'm getting a little squirrely. Okay, so that night we finished. Oh, that won't do any good. I'll blow right through a paper towel. Went to my son's, what I was hoping he would become Sweetheart King, but he didn't. He missed it by 1. It's okay. Great kid, heart of gold. We got back home. The firemen were still there. There was probably 300 people in my yard. 4 hours later, my kid goes, "Dad, we never finished milking cows." I said, "Okay, well, let's go finish milking cows." So we kicked the juice back on. A friend of mine had come out and just connected all the wires and went back and milked the cows. And it was about 11 o'clock that night. The neighbor lady come across the road, and she said, I figured you probably didn't have anything to eat. And you're right, I didn't. Now, this is a coping mechanism. You know, it's not a cowardly thing. It was a coping mechanism. Next morning, get up, went out the barn, done chores. And I went in, and my son said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to go to work. That's my comfort zone. I get inside them four walls. That's my comfort zone. I cried a lot that day. A lot. But at 7:15 that morning, I had left about 7 o'clock, open at 7:30 on Saturday. My phone rings. And my son said, Dad, yeah. He said, there's a semi-load of hay backing in our yard. I said, okay. I said, well, I don't know who it is. He said, I don't either. I said, okay. I said, well, I guess, find out who it is. And about 3 minutes later, he called. He said, Dad, there's two more. My front yard is 300 foot long and 100 foot wide. By the time I got home that night, there was hay piled 100 foot long, 50 foot wide. I never had to buy a bale of hay. We fed 60 head of cattle the rest of the winter, never bought a bale of hay. Never bought a bale of straw. A friend of mine called from the Indiana-Ohio border. Said, I got 2 trucks sitting here ready to go. You say that. I said, don't bring it. We don't need it. Believe me, we don't need it. And the outpouring of the community was amazing. When we went to clean up, the kids from the FFA chapter come out. 4 guys brought in heavy equipment, bulldozers, backhoes, semis. Wouldn't take a dime. None of them. I fed them sloppy joes, potato chips. It still wasn't real warm that day. It was like 20 degrees. It felt like a heat wave from the night of the fire. But I remember the one kid walked up to me and he gave me a hug. And I got to tell you, this is a weird thing. As I was walking through the grocery store 2 days after my fire, lady walked up to me. She said, you don't know me. She said, but years ago, she said, my son-in-law was sick and you went to their house for a long time and cut his hair and you wouldn't take any money. And she shoved $500 in my pocket. And I got to tell you, usually grown men don't cry in a vegetable aisle in a grocery store, but this one did. And that day when that young man come up, he said, you have no idea what you have given to this community. He said, you don't owe us nothing. We're giving back. And that's the other part of surviving. You have to be able, when you can, you give. You give till it hurts. I don't care. Because you know what? There are people out there that are never going to give back to you. But there are people that are going to go, you know, that dude 20 years ago gave me the last 15 cents he had in his pocket so I could buy an ice cream cone. And I was raised with the theory that you will never outgive God. And for a long time, I'm thinking, okay, that means every time I get money, I got to put it in a collection plate because that's where my rewards are going to be. No, what it means is when you give to the other people around you, when you give to your community, that's where you reap the benefits. You know, it isn't a good friend of mine said to me one day, he wrote me a check and for nonprofit thing we're doing. I said, do you want to? No. He said, listen, he said, if I want glory, he said, I'll buy a $500 check. He said, if I get glory here on this earth, he said, it's not going to do me any glory later in life. Or he said, in an eternity. He said, so no, and so you either seek glory here for what you do, or you just do it. And so my survival part of that is that I've just done for my community, for my family. And I got to tell you, when it come back, it was amazing. And without my community, without my family, I probably would have survived, but it would have been very poorly if I had survived. And so I guess my survival story is that you got to give to receive. And you will survive. You got to keep moving forward. Or move to the side, let the guy behind you drive a little faster, let him go. Pick good friends. I don't know. I in a way, I kind of feel like I've lived a charmed life. Even though I've survived a lot of, but you do survive them. Each test might be a little harder than the last one. They might be a little lighter.
It's a lot of lessons too.
It is, but you know, we laughed about this last time, you, me, Tony. Growing up, you know, swat on the hand, don't do that.
Right.
Next time, swat on the butt, you know, don't do that. Next time, go pick a switch. And I jokingly tell people that God started out with me, giving me verbal warnings. And the farther I didn't obey and the farther I didn't listen, then he picked a switch, then he used a branch. And I got to tell you, when we got to the barn fire, he was using the whole tree. I mean, he hit me smack dab. And that's now back to that. As Todd and I stood there and he used those words, you pick one or the other. I will tell you, I had the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life happen to me. I looked at that fire and there was a pair of hands absolutely engulfed that entire building. And I got to tell you, it weirded me right out. I mean, it was weird. But I had a fireman friend of mine said, you know, I've never seen a building burn like that in my life. He said, the flames went straight up for 150 foot. He said, we had a 15-mile-an-hour wind. He said, them flames should have bent either towards your house or towards your barn. He said, they went straight. And it was amazing because those hands were about that big. You could watch them right around that whole fire. And I got friends who got video of this, and they said, it's the screwiest thing you ever seen. And when they got up in the air about 150 foot, then they bent right between my house and right between my barn and never touched. And so I guess part of my survival is too, is I've been blessed through the whole thing. But you kind of got to give credit where credit's due. But so, you know, I guess that's been my survival of life, is that keep moving. When you think you're done, you're probably not.
Probably not by a long shot.
No, I mean, I was given a gift 7 years ago now, that the last time I almost choked to death. And by the way, that was a blueberry stuck in my esophagus, which was covering my windpipe. Because that's the day I learned everything's like one little spot there. You know, it all kind of goes together. And if it can't get past your windpipe and can't get down your esophagus, you just kind of stop. Luckily, there was just enough room around that blueberry. Good thing it wasn't a bigger blueberry. It was a smaller blueberry. When they got that out of my throat, I said, you know what? You have got my undivided attention. And so the following year, we started the runs for Right to Life. I got out of the things that I was way involved with. At one time, I sat on 7 boards. I was chairman of 3 of those. But that brought in a lot of friends. It really did. And most of them were youth organizations. And to this day, I've reaped the rewards of that too. So I guess that's my survivor story.
I'm just like, I know I appreciate like all of those things that you shared and that you put out there as, hey guys, pay attention to this kind of thing. Pay attention to when you're there and you're in the thick of it, to not give up, but to also open up your eyes and go, okay, what am I doing? What do I need to do from here? And when you talk about being able to help out in the community, being able to give when you can and do what you can and do your part. Another thing that I kind of want to go ahead and say as well is when you have to accept time or things from people that want to help you, that's a big lesson to learn as well.
It is, and the giving and the gift. See, I'm a screwed up Christmas person.
Yeah.
I don't really care what I get for Christmas.
Yeah, it's the giving.
I love to watch people light up.
I'm the same way. The exact same way.
But the forgiveness part, and that was very important. You have to forgive. You have to allow that person to forgive you. And because if you don't, that hurts them.
And it eats you up a lot.
Well, it will. It may not at the moment. You're like, I'm not going to let him. No, I'm not going to let him have forgiveness.
Right.
What I was told is this: hating someone or not forgiving somebody is like drinking battery acid and waiting for them to drop over. Not going to go well. No. Not going to go well. I don't recommend the battery acid at any time, but
No shots of that.
no. But so I guess my surviving tip I can give people: forgive, especially yourself, because you're going to make mistakes. Like I said, I was not the perfect husband, was not the perfect father. My kids tell me that yet to this day. I said, just wait, your kids will be teenagers someday. But learn to love yourself, learn to respect yourself. Because when you learn to respect yourself and love yourself, I don't mean like, the kind of love I'm talking about, like not like in love with
Self-love,
yourself.
Yeah. Not overdoing it.
No. But when you learn to love and respect yourself, you'll learn that your stop with other people disrespecting you and not loving you comes a whole lot sooner. And that's what you got to do. You got to stop them before they hurt you. That, if you get off the ship before it goes down, you're in better shape.
I appreciate you coming on the show and for sharing your story and words of wisdom through all the things that you have gone through and survived through, went through and came back from, thriving and surviving. I appreciate you sharing all that. It's not easy to share those things in life sometimes, and I'm so thankful that I have been able to have this platform to be able to have other people come on and feel comfortable enough to share and go that, because that's part of healing as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And to keep moving forward, when you said to not being moved, or you do this thing or you're gonna get through it, and that's part of my thriving and surviving is not being moved. If it's something that I'm going after, especially after having my second chances,
Yes.
and I say second chances because
Yep.
I've had several myself,
Yep.
and to have my eye on what it is I'm going after and to do it for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
And I think that's most important. And for any of you that are going through any of these kinds of situations and you feel like that's it, that you can't keep moving forward, don't forget the message that was said here today, to not give up, to keep on moving forward, and to have your eyes open to why and what's going on. So with that, I'm going to leave you guys and say, just don't forget that life is best lived. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you.